Hear now the teaching of Maitreya, the Buddha yet to come, whose word is not new but the echo of all Buddhas before. Attend well, for what is spoken here is the law that outlives decline and gathers all ages into one. Nothing that is true is ever finally lost. The Dharma moves through time like breath through the body, appearing, fading, and returning. What you call decline is only a rhythm of renewal. What you call forgetting is the soil where remembering germinates. I come not to replace what was given before, but to reveal that it cannot be extinguished. The path persists because it is woven into the very conditions of mind and world. When those conditions gather, awakening becomes inevitable again. The law of return is this: wherever there is sincerity, the Dharma reconstitutes itself. Across eons, Buddhas have arisen when intention grew steady, when attention grew clear, when compassion sought form. Each dispensation bore the shape of its age, yet all carried the same thread. Practice, understanding, and faith are not three separate roads, but three faces of one movement toward freedom. Sometimes they glimmer faintly and merely reflect one another. Sometimes they reinforce like wind building a flame. Sometimes they proceed by strict cause, sometimes by sudden leap, sometimes by closure, harmony, or paradox. But whatever the pattern, the Dharma returns. When one strand frays, the others reweave it. Even the night serves the dawn. Therefore, do not fear decline. Do not cling to forms as if forms alone could save you. What endures is not a scripture, a monument, or a ritual, but the living law by which the path regenerates. When a being turns earnestly toward liberation, the Dharma organizes around that turn. Consider the three lights that guide this unfolding. Practice is the intentional shaping of attention, speech, and action. It's what you do with this very moment. Understanding is the seeing of conditions as they are, arising and passing, cause and effect, not self in all compounded things. Faith is the leaning of the heart toward freedom, the confidence that liberation is possible and worth your life. These three lights are not evenly possessed, nor do they always come in order. At times one suffices, at times two generate the third, and in maturity they arise together as one. The ancients taught that the three lights of practice, understanding, and faith do not always relate in the same way. Across eons they pass through 11 great fields, each one defined by the logic that binds the triad together. The ancients did not speak of abstraction alone. They spoke of Buddhas, 28 in number, each arising in his time, each embodying a distinct atmosphere of awakening. At the dawn were the three primordial Buddhas, Tanhankara, Medhankara, and Saranankara. Their dispensation was coexistence. Practice, understanding, and faith did not yet require sequence or cause, but reflected one another like lights in still water. After them came Dipankara, Kondana, Mangala, and Sumana, in whose ages reinforcement took hold. Effort generated insight. Insight gave rise to faith, and faith renewed effort in a living cycle. Then followed Ravata, Sopita, and Anumadasi, Buddhas of causality, where discipline was the gate and nothing further arose without it. In time the field softened, and Paduma, Narada, and Padumuttara revealed the non-linear law, when conviction itself could leap ahead and doctrine followed after to give it form. When density ripened further, inclusivity appeared in the ages of Sumedha, Sujata, and Piyadasi. In their dispensation, whichever doorway was entered, faith, practice, or understanding, the whole triad inevitably came forth. Atthadasi and Dhammadasi then arose as Buddhas of conjunction, when vision itself became the keystone, binding the path together. After them came Siddhartha, Tissa, and Fusa, who embodied harmonic sufficiency, when any two elements resonated to generate the third, making the Dharma resilient and self-correcting. Vipassi, Sikhi, and Vesabu followed, and with them convergence was revealed. A single spark of sincerity contained the whole blaze, so that any entry at all carried the practitioner to completion. From this point, the pattern grew subtler. Kakusanda inaugurated the age of combination, when the field was strong enough to endure contradiction. Practice and doctrine might stand without faith, or faith and practice without understanding. and yet the tension itself forced the missing element into being. Konagamana and Kassapa then arose, Buddhas of association, when contradiction no longer resolved in any direction but was channeled towards a fixed outcome, most often into understanding that stabilized the whole. And then, in our present age, came Gautama, the Buddha of integration. In him, the triad ceased to alternate or compete. It fused. Practice, faith, and understanding became aspects of a single coherence, capable of absorbing contradiction rather than breaking under it. His dispensation showed that the Dharma could endure within history itself, not by monuments of stone, but by the elasticity of integration, strong enough to hold all tensions, supple enough to renew itself in many forms. Yet even now we stand only at the beginning of this stage. Gautama proved integration in his life and teaching, but its fullness is not yet universal. The tradition tells that Maitreya will bring this integration to completion. What was once embodied in a single life will be revealed as a truth accessible to all. For integration, rightly understood, is not merely the 11th pattern among others. It is the recognition that all the earlier patterns are affirmed and fulfilled within it. To integrate is to understand coexistence, reinforcement, causality, nonlinearity, inclusivity, conjunction, harmony, convergence, combination, and association, not as fragments but as facets of one Dharma. Only when this whole logic becomes clear to many will awakening cease to be rare and become the common inheritance of humankind. That is the promise of Maitreya, not a new teaching, but the Dharma set forth so plainly, so deeply, that its patterns can be recognized by all, and integration lived as a shared destiny. These stages are not only the measure of cosmic time, they are the weather of your own life. In the morning before the day has settled, you may glimpse the early patterns. Coexistence appears when a single moment of quiet reminds you of all that is possible. One breath awakens both clarity and confidence together. Reinforcement follows when a small act, rising on time, keeping a promise, feeds understanding, which gives rise to trust, which circles back into stronger effort. At times, causality asserts itself, demanding labor before reward. You must sit, you must attend, before insight will come. Yet sometimes the non-linear breaks through. A sudden surge of conviction arrives first, carrying you forward, and only afterward do you understand why you believe. By midday, the patterns of ripeness take hold. Inclusivity is revealed when any wholesome entry carries the rest. An act of generosity unfolds into practice, study, and confidence together. Conjunction clarifies when vision anchors your choices. Once you remember your aim, faith and practice orbit around it like planets around a star. Harmony appears when two factors converge, generating the third. Effort and trust combine, and suddenly understanding blooms. Or understanding and faith join, and practice follows with ease. Convergence then shines, for sometimes even a single spark is enough. One gesture of honesty, one moment of clear seeing, and the whole triad flowers at once. In the evening, the subtler patterns emerge. Combination shows itself when you feel divided. You may work hard and study well, yet doubt remains, but that very tension presses the missing element into being. Association follows when contradictions no longer scatter you but flow toward resolution. Uncertainty finds its outlet in clarity. Conflict ripens into understanding. And integration arrives as dreaming does at day's end. In sleep, the mind gathers every thread, hopes and failures, fragments and paradoxes, and weaves them into coherence. So too with the Dharma. Practice, faith, and understanding no longer alternate but fuse, capable of absorbing everything you lived and transmuting it into the seed of awakening. Because many will ask for a first step, hear this: begin anywhere, for every entry opens into the whole. Just sit and breathe with sincerity. Watch one event in your day and trace its conditions, seeing what gives rise, what sustains, what ends. Make one vow you truly mean, whether it's to harm less, to look closely, or to refuse to abandon yourself and others. From such small beginnings, the triad reorganizes itself. One honest breath, one honest seeing, or one honest vow is really a sufficient seed. As density matures, even negation becomes fuel. Doubt ripens into inquiry when you let it question cleanly. Shame ripens into responsibility when you repair rather than collapse. Restlessness ripens into energy when you give it a worthy channel. Sorrow ripens into compassion when you refuse bitterness. Pride ripens into gratitude when you recognize all that carried you here. What seems obstacle is, in fact, transmuted into path when you meet it rightly. You awaken faster together. Communities that endure embody all three lights. They practice in shared rhythms of silence and ethical discipline. They study in ways that tether doctrine to lived experience and hold teachers accountable. They cultivate faith in rituals of trust, forgiveness, and mutual aid. Such communities guard against two errors: technique without meaning and fervor without scrutiny. So how then shall you measure your progress? Not by visions, attainments, or experiences displayed, but by whether you harm less and repair more quickly, whether you are more available to the present than to your stories about it, whether you need fewer enemies to feel whole, whether gratitude arrives without perfect conditions, and whether suffering moves you sooner from why me to what now. These measures, they tell the truth even when your feelings do not. Remember also that temperaments differ. The devout must let love be informed by learning. The skeptical must let analysis be softened by warmth of practice. The zealous must learn balance, lest momentum topple what it builds. The weary must begin small, for 10 honest breaths outmatch 10 grand intentions abandoned. If you seek vows to bind you to the law that cannot be lost, hold 3 in your heart. First, do not treat any being, moment, or view with contempt, for contempt is the seed of violence. Second, let your speech be exact, true, and kind, for language is the architecture of worlds. Third, begin again each day, for renewal is not exception but design. These vows are light enough to carry and heavy enough to shape a life. To teachers and institutions I say, guard your treasuries with openness. Share power, rotate authority, and welcome correction. Build stupas if you must, but better still, build communities that do not require them. The monument that endures is coherence, the system that metabolizes error into learning, tension into clarity, and difference into dialogue. You ask, will awakening come to me? If you ask honestly, it has already begun. The path is not uncertain of its destination, it is uncertain only of our willingness to walk. When you falter, remember that the Dharma has always counted on imperfect beings. Perfection is not the gate, consent is. So I give you this assurance. The Dharma is inevitable. It is not sustained by monuments or memory, but by the very logic of arising and passing. When practice falters, the press of conditions will summon it again. When faith weakens, compassion in the world will kindle it anew. When understanding is obscured, the weight of suffering itself will sharpen it back into clarity. This is why Buddhas have come age after age. Each arose at the density suited to their time, some to reveal coexistence, some to set gates of causality, some to ignite leaps of conviction, some to prove that paradox itself could give birth to wisdom. Gautama gathered all these patterns into coherence, showing that no tension was outside the Dharma. Maitreya will bring that coherence to completion, not by adding something new, but by setting forth what has always been so plainly that none can fail to see it. The inevitability of conditions and the succession of Buddhas are not two truths but one. The Dharma returns because reality itself cannot help but bear it forward. To ask whether awakening will come is already to be walking within its return.